So now we are here to honor the man who made it all possible. You know, I kind of feel like Martin Lawrence at the end of Never Come to the Jam. Now it's time to say goodbye to all my yogi friends. Please, this is the man that invited me, the man who made the space available to you, the man who makes you feel good every month, who is adamant about bringing positive vibrations to the side of town. Please give it up for my man, John.
Well, all I can say at this point is that I'm completely redundant right now. Because what I have been planning to present tonight was already done by Matt and stuff. Then you saw it, I mean, Matt described it and explained it, and then Tommy showed it to you. What the fuck am I left with? Right. I'd leave, but you wouldn't believe me unless I read this, that they just did what I'm talking about. So, I think, my memory's getting a little bad, but I think that the last time that I read in here, I read about the birth of my soul. And this time I'm reading about the birth of the universe, the soul of the universe as a whole. And these are journeys that I go on in the dream time with my totem, the lynx. So we're off. I asked about the angels. I asked to witness the creation. I was crossing the sky with Lynx. We passed through the arm of Spiral Galaxy. Remember Spiral? The Spiral Galaxy, perhaps the Milky Way, perhaps another. I had no way of telling. Stars drifted past me, many of them apparently old, white dwarfs, red giants, neutron stars, a few novas. Oddly, my ability to see these stars seemed quite independent of the amount of light they emitted. The inert cores of dead stars were as clear as the novas. I passed out of the spiral arm and felt myself floating above the galaxy as a whole. From where I could see the black maw at the center, around and into which a stream of stars spiraled down and disappeared. Looking into this inky darkness, as if into the center of a tornado from above, I discerned, felt as much as saw, a writhing, twisting intensity of motion, which seemed almost possessed of will and direction as it disappeared into its own core. The stars surrounding this center of darkness now appeared not to be following an individual orbit, but were strung out along tendrils extending from the center, like terraced lines along a hillside. These slowly rotating and writhing tendrils of matter, stars, dust, planets, rocky fragments, fields of gases, did not seem so much to be layered through space as to comprise space. The galaxy, now eating itself at its core, began to look like some great octopus pulling its arms into its own belly. Then, as if from further away, I saw there were many such galaxies, all falling in upon themselves, their dark, writhing cores twisted toward a single meeting point. As they pulled together, the surface of space between the galaxies bent inward, so that what had been the gentle curve of a near-flat horizon became pitted and convoluted, wrinkled and twisted. You can all see Tommy dancing. The swirling lines of stars and matter snaked inward more rapidly. I had asked to see the creation. What I saw instead was a universe dying. Not fading away, dying into ashen indifference, but rather racing towards some pulsing implosion. I observed this, and then, for one brief moment, wondered who was I who watched this awful event, and in that very moment felt the currents grip me. felt myself distending into lines of light, being pulled into the vortex, felt myself as infinite extension reversed to infinite compression, become a point, disappeared. There was nothing until we were flying out. We, all of us, emerged, emitted, abruptly hurled, I might say we streaked across the skies, but it was not so. We were all there was. We were the skies, the night, the trail of our glory, creating line and shadow, hue and change. We were the emissaries, messengers, carriers of the great mission, divine will. In the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." We were that light.
Yes.
Streaking out in all directions, full of fervor to eliminate the creation. We, the angels. It would seem this should have been a pretty straightforward assignment, giving our unbending zeal to do God's will, to keep the straight and narrow way. In time, we found there was a problem, which was, since we ourselves were the first emanation from the divine center, there was no creation ahead of us to illuminate. No one to teach. None to shine upon. We were it, alone. This caused us no small dilemma. We began to look back, seeking new directions from divinity. Our initial burst of pure enlightenment had lasted the first 1 to the minus 43rd part of a second. The first moment of new creation, or Big Bang as it's now called. In that brief time, we found to our consternation that we were the law, not only moral law and light of spirit, but the light itself, and thereby the laws of physics. The great law of relationship, or relativity, that space is curved in fact by the gravity of that greatest of events, creation itself. There was nowhere to go but back to God. We turned to go home and began to run into one another. Lines of light streaking out, the angels turned back around, then inward began to meet ourselves. True, we continue to experience the single point of consciousness of angelic intention to give the light, to express divine will, to shine on something. In this yearning to give light and have it received, we were faithful to our origins, still experienced ourselves as pure, direct, straightforward in purpose. There was no complexity there, no self-doubt, but as we swept back in toward our point of origin, our meetings created interference patterns. These numberless voices of I am the light began crossing each other, and as they crossed, their vibrations became complex, took on hue, shading, pattern, their purity prismed out in 1,000 levels of density and 1,000,000 more subtle variations, yet each one continued to say, I come from God to give you light. These crossings became more complex and denser, and many were now inharmonious. We grew confused. The angels, we, began to argue as to who carried the true light of one God. The arguments compressed our vibrations more. Some seemed to link up into alliances which rekindled their fervor. These burst forth into secondary sources of light, incandescent sons of God. While others lost their vitality, became inert, drifted together through the dark, pressed into each other by the gravity of our dilemma, defeat and loss. In chaos, a spinning maelstrom of lost hope and lost light, these despairing angels whirled together in increasing density. The swirls of darkened angel dust, compressed into self-protective, dense spheres, into worlds, or worlds. These now conceded that their only remaining hope was to accept light from the brighter angels, banding together into networks of a more shadowed nature. They began to build their plan nets to recapture light. And we began to meet ourselves.
is the man that made it possible. You know, and I'm gonna tell you something. I've been fortunate to go places. But in Chicago, there's no other place like this where so many traditions are respected and revered, and so much science, so many conscious people, you know, all in one place. This is it. So all of us are special. You know what I'm saying? And from the man who made it happen all the way to the person who's coming here for the very first time, it's a very divine purpose tonight. So I hope you guys are right where we are. And we are. Right?
Yeah.
I'll give it up for my man, John.
I am a co-founder of Chicago, along with Amy and Dave and Carla. We did it together.
Let's do it.
Yeah. And now we're going to give it back to you.
Back to me.
Back to you.
Okay. Well, you know what?